How's everybody doing this morning? My name is Jeff Morgan. I know quite a few of you. Some of you I don't know. And most of you will forget me before you leave here today. That's okay. Sarah McNeil and Bernard Robbins came to me with this idea a few months ago, and I love meeting with these guys. They're very creative, and they've been making me look good for a few years. But they had this idea to have this little conference this fall, and we just tagged it in with our Innovative Teaching and Learning Symposium, which we do every spring. We just called this Innovative Teaching and Learning at a Distance. So they worked very hard putting this together, but I also need to thank two very talented people over here at this table. That's Teresa Acosta and Taylor Fail. And Bernard threatened me earlier that he was going to hire at least one of these people away from me, and I told him I would never fund any of his activities again, so that conversation came to an immediate end. But I do want to thank everybody for coming out. It's Friday. I know a lot of people wake up on Friday morning and they say, yeah, I signed up for that thing, but it's Friday, you know? So I think I'll just stay home. But people actually did show up, and more people will drift in as the day goes on. I know that you are aware of the lineup for today. We have some really excellent people that are going to speak to you this morning. And although I know some things about our first speaker that apparently Bernard doesn't know, we've decided to let Bernard introduce our first speaker. He didn't know that Curtis won a dog sled a team award last year. Didn't know this. But Bernard will tell you a few things about him.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. I am Bernard Robin. I'm a faculty member here in the College of Education. And when we decided to have this conference and we're looking for guest speakers, we immediately thought of Kurt Bonk, and we decided, well, we need to get some information on him so that we can introduce him properly. So we asked him to send us some information. So he sent me his 182-page CV. I think he used a really big font, maybe. Anyway, he made it much easier because he actually has a website with 13 different bios, and I'll just read a few of them. So there's the cut to the chase bio that says, he does stuff. And then there's the more explanatory bio, he does lots of stuff. Then there's the Twitter bio. Kurt Bonk is a former CPA with a doctorate in ed psych from the U of Wisconsin. His interests are global ed, new tech, and extreme learning. So what I thought I would do is just kind of synthesize, all of the information on Kurt that I could find. So let me just share a little bit of that with you. Kurt is a professor at Indiana University teaching psychology and technology courses. He has won numerous awards, including the Most Outstanding Achievement Award from the U.S. Distance Learning Association and the Most Innovative Teaching in a Distance Education Program Award from the state of Indiana. Kurt is a well-known authority on emerging technologies for learning and has given over 1,500 talks around the world related to online teaching and learning. In addition, he has over 300 publications on topics such as online and blended learning, massive open online courses, open source software, collaborative technologies, and synchronous and asynchronous computer conferencing. Some of his books include The World is Open, Empowering Online Learning, The Handbook of Blended Learning, Electronic Collaborators, and most recently, MOOCs and Open Education Around the World, which he co-edited with Tom Reeves, who's also here, and one of our other speakers today, one of our other faculty members in the College of Ed, Mimi Lee, and Tom Reynolds. Kurt is a dedicated educator, an expert researcher, an inspiring mentor, a passionate speaker, a true leader, and a generous friend. It's my pleasure to welcome Kurt to the Education 2020 conference.
Thank you for inviting me back this morning. all those accolades aside, I couldn't dress properly. I had this yellow shirt and tie on, and Tom Reeves says, you better wear Houston colors. So I had to change my shirt during breakfast this morning. I should have known better, right? Because almost exactly 10 years ago, I was here, my first time. A lot has happened in the past 10 years, of course, right? Cubs have won the World Series. The first African-American president. And who knows what's in store next week. Education 2020 meets Education 3.0. That gets kind of confusing, doesn't it? Notice the title of the conference is Education 2020. For the year 2020. In fact, my next book is going to be titled Education 2020. And when I mentioned that to Bernard and Sarah, they said, well, that sounds like a great conference title. I said, it certainly does to me. We got some early promos on the book, so hopefully before the year 2020 it comes out. It's my next project, and I'm going to go through 20 new roles of instructors and 20 principles of instruction to create learning environments. I'm going to give you a sneak peek, but it's a secret. You can't tell anyone about it, okay? But I'll give you a little bit of the vision of the way things are changing. The focus of this talk will be on how learning is changing, often through digital technologies, but it doesn't have to be that way. Learning's changing to be more comfortable. Look at this comfortable room that we're in. It's more modular, it's more open, it's more visual, it's more video-based, more game-like, more blended. A lot of ways learning's changing. We'll go through that from the standpoint of 3 themes. Learning is about creating access, engagement, and customization. I'm going to try and umbrella all those 30 changes in those 3 key themes here today. I've been back to this campus many times since 10 years ago. It was a regional campus in your library. It was a fascinating couple of days that I spent here. Yomei is here. She'll remember that, right, Yomei? Years ago. Remember the picture we took, Yomei? I got it here. You're right next to me there somewhere. Let's see if I can get this to... There it is. Like I said, a lot of things have changed since that time. Okay? A lot of things have changed since Academos and Plato and dialoguing with lectures, oration, and so forth. I'm going to talk about changes that have taken place, not just the Cubs winning the World Series, learning how to. But we're going to talk a bit about the technology side more so. Don't come to my talk after this. I am going to give away some copies of the book, but don't come, because you can download that book entirely for free online at tec-variety speakers. But I'll be talking a bit more about that session and also the book. This talk's going to be emphasizing the technology a little bit more so, but it's about the intersection of the two together. We'll talk about the evolution of e-learning. I'm going to talk about these megatrends that confront us all today: engagement, access, and customization. And we'll get into the future a bit, embedded videos that do play. We tested them this morning, but we'll see. They play. Education 3.0 3 years ago, and now it has its own webpage in Wikipedia. You can see what it's all about, but it's about moving us to a more personalized learning environments. Dr. Reeves will talk about later with project-based learning and more formative assessments and so forth. But we have to think back in time. When I was in Taiwan and Taipei a few years ago, I went to the Confucius Center, talked to Confucius for a bit. It was, reflecting back on history, we've tended to give a lot of ownership of learning to the instructor, imparting knowledge to all of us. And the joke in education was, if Socrates was reborn today, if Plato was reborn today, if Confucius was reborn today, it'd be the same old thing. Education would be recognizable. Schools would be recognizable. If Red Van Winkle fell asleep before the Revolutionary War and didn't wake up 20 years later, but 200 years later, he'd recognize schools. Well, I've got news for you. I hope, my goal today is that you will say, no, education has changed, is changing, and I will be part of that change. If Rick, when Wickle opened his eyes up today, he'd be surprised by what he sees in our various classrooms and what's possible and what is going to happen in the near future. So he fell asleep, and he woke up 20 years later. Our students fall asleep in class, and what happens to them? They don't pass our classes, right? You shall not pass. All of you with me on the count of 3 will yell, you shall not pass. 1, 2, 3. You shall not pass. Okay. Of course, we didn't test that earlier, did we? That didn't happen before. Thank you very much. Okay. I don't know what that was, but that's... All right, I got a little problem. No, we didn't. We're going to need some help because I got a lot of audio to show, but let's see if this...
We got 2 mics on up here in front.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay. See, I told you all those accolades were misguided. Can't even figure out a microphone. Education 2020. Again, this is a book I have not written. It's a secret, okay? So I'm giving you a sneak peek of what's going to go in. But 2020 vision of the future is important. We lack leadership and vision oftentimes in education and educational technology in particular. But it's a secret, okay?
Keep it secret.
Keep it secret.
Keep it secret.
Okay. There we go again. Oh, why is that? I may have to. It's not me. Sorry, everyone. Thank you. I'll go without audio for a while. That's fine. So we have 20 new college instructor today, or high school instructor, including instructor as concierge, coach, curator, counselor, all start with the letter C. Instructor is someone who's, if you will, someone who's helping you, nudge you along, if you will. And I'll talk about those various roles today. It's still important to impart knowledge, but it's one of many things that we do. Now, the most famous instructional technologists in the world, or one of them, besides Dr. Reeves, who's here with us today, is David Merrill. And David Merrill has his first principles of instruction. Principle of activation and integration and demonstration and application and task-based, problem-based learning. I have my 20 last principles of instruction, including the principle of flexibility. Being flexible for the learners that you have, giving them options and choice and so forth. Convenience. Working parents need convenient ways to turn in their assignments and do their assignments, yet maintaining high expectations, putting the bar higher and higher through prior student work and sharing that. Giving them choice and options, case A, case B, case C. Task A, task B, task C, task C. The web enables us to create many options for our learners, but not too many options. We don't want to overwhelm them, right? We find that nice balance or mix of things, but along the way providing not only instructor feedback, but peer feedback, expert feedback, self-feedback, system feedback. Feedback's one of the most important things we do, especially those of us teaching blended or fully online. Principles of sharing. When you do meet those high expectations, you want to share what happens. Students to share across institutions or within an institution. I know Dr. Lee, Mimi Lee, who did the MOOCs book with me, had a Wikibook project with me here 10 years ago, and we had cross-institutional sharing taking place. Our job roles as instructors or instructional designers has changed since I was here 10 years ago. Sharing is alive and well. It's very prevalent. What we do in our job descriptions, it should say to share with others what you've accomplished. Also, we experiment more with non-traditional technology. And the best book you can buy for $1 used on Amazon is this book from the 1980s from Charles Wedemeyer, which talks about learning through any way other than eyeball-to-eyeball learning, ear-pan-to-ear-pan learning, classroom settings. He was the crazy man in the 50s who said we can learn through satellites. You know, video conferencing, web conferencing that we're doing today with Skype and Zoom and Adobe Connect and so forth. His book, Learning at the Back Door, Reflections on Non-Traditional Learning Across the Lifespan, is a classic. And it's one of the books that, again, for $1 used in Amazon, 10 cents when I was in Thailand, I highly recommend that you take a look. We've got audio now?
Try.
Okay, I'll try that again. Sorry about that, everyone. That didn't. So, we've got the tech people coming to help us out. Principle 15, the principle of trial and error. Principle of trying something out, seeing if it works, letting students take some risks. Have a first draft where they have a plan of action and you give them some feedback on it, push them, nudge them along, and so forth. So in the book, I will go through 20 principles related to creating learning environments, my last principles. It's about the ecology of learning. I'll talk about the instructor roles and the marriage thereof. And I'll have a subtitle called Toward a Vision of Blended Learning Ideas and Beyond. Blended Learning Ideas is 20 letters. They'll represent 20 problems of teaching, and I'll have some solutions related to each one. And so that's a quick peek, a quick vision of what's possible, what might be happening. And so hopefully it's something that you might be able to grab into. Now the Tech Variety book is something free that you can download and utilize and so forth. And hopefully he's gotten this fixed. We'll see. Okay, looks like he's got it for us. So we'll go on. The principle of expanded resources. Thinking about how to use video, text, animations, simulations, open access to educational resources, OER. There's so much out there that we can expand our classrooms, get students to work with others in other environments, other settings, cross-cultural collaborations. And every week in one of my classes, I have a former student or a book author come into my class to talk about this to the students about the field, get them excited about the field, push them a bit. So in the college level, we can use web conferencing and video conferencing to bring in experts to our class. Dr. Reeves was an expert. I brought him into my class last year. Last week I had someone coming in from Canada. I had someone from Indonesia and Malaysia. I've got someone next week from Thailand coming in to talk about what they're doing in their careers and so forth. There's a lot of ways to get students excited about your discipline today. Learning is changing. We're moving away from didactic learning to interactive, collaborative forms of learning today, what we'll call Education 3.0. 3.0 classrooms, according to Wikipedia, move us away from lectures to having more time with projects and reflections on those projects, often utilizing digital forms of technology. We're moving away from Education 1.0, where we're the source of knowledge. Remember Plato's Academos, vineyards, or Confucius, or whomever. We're moving away from that time where we're the sole authority. Version 2, Education 2.0, what we were talking about 10 years ago when I was here, was where we're more of a guide on the side. We're trying to promote active learning environments and so forth. And we're moving today to multiple passive learning. We orchestrate the learning process, if you will. We're opening up the learning process, thinking beyond our traditional boundaries, classroom boundaries, if you will, becoming more innovative and creative in our classroom settings. So the role of instructor becomes curator, counselor, conductor of information in that classroom. This is happening so fast that there was a summit in Asia a couple of months ago talking about the need for new models in education. And that summit talked about the fourth industrial age. And what is that fourth industrial age? I'll give you a sneak peek of what they're talking about when they say the fourth industrial age. And I was in Korea a month and a half ago, and they're fascinated with a new book called The Fourth Industrial Age. So let's give you a sneak peek of what that looks like, if we have audio. Let's see if we do. And maybe we don't. And maybe we don't. We had, sorry, this is out of my, audio, let's see. Turn it back up. This one here, is that right? So in Korea last month, I tested for 2 hours, went to lunch and came back and the internet didn't work. So I should have known this would happen here too. We had it all tested though. It was working just grand. There we go. I heard something. So,
and computers and communications technology.
thank you. Let's try that again. Okay. I think we got it now. Might be a little
The
hot.
original Industrial Revolution was driven by the discovery that you could use steam engines to do all kinds of interesting things.
But that was followed by additional revolutions for electricity and computers and communications technology. We're now in the early stages of the fourth Industrial Revolution, which is bringing together digital, physical, and biological systems.
Okay, so that's a little glimpse. This fourth industrial age gets us into nanotechnologies, robotics, artificial intelligence, exoskeletons, all sorts of things. But in education, it gets us into the maker movement, having students doing something, actively engaging in the process. Seymour Papert, 20, 30 years ago, was talking about having students construct knowledge, build something, take computers apart and put them back together again. He passed away a couple of months ago, but his ideas are alive and well in these maker labs. And we have one at Indiana University with 3D printers and so forth. This little quote from the Fourth Industrial Age Summit gives you a sense of what kids can do today with open technology.
To a kid, 18 years old, that has discovered something really very, very unique. Came up with how to get better productivity and better yields for seeds of corn. And so he basically came with the idea that if you would perforate these seeds, you would get more food. And you think about it and say, but he didn't go to university. So how does he get all that knowledge? And he told me, I mean, I've been watching YouTube since the age of 12, and I'm so interested that I've seen everything about it. I've read everything about it. The world is really open to learning. The thing is, how do you give the incentive to your kids to do that?
The quote there is, the world is really open to learning. Some of you might know the inside joke. I have a book called The World is Open, but he's saying the kid didn't even go to college but made a new invention. How did he do that? Students today are exploring on their own self-directed learning, okay? Self-directed learning processes. Another trend today is robotics in education. Now this is one I didn't test, so we'll see what happens here. I probably shouldn't have clicked there, but okay. So a new robot called Pepper, the robot, is something coming to your home soon.
I'm Jennifer Jolly at CES 2016, along with my new BRF, Best Robot Friend Forever. This is Pepper. The Linguist Companion robot coming soon to a home near you. That's right, we will actually have a robot like this in our house sooner rather than later. And I have one of the chief scientific officers here.
I'm here.
Yes, please, Rudolph, come on over. Rudolph, thank you so much for showing off this amazing companion. Do you know what my name is? Sugar?
But it's very special. I'll let you watch more of that. For the sake of time, I'll move on, but he basically interacts and talks to and finds information for her and for him. What we need, as that title says, we need programmers. How are we going to get programmers today? One way they're getting programmers is teaching refugees how to code. This solves many problems, right? Getting people jobs and employment and getting them into society and occupations that are needed. So there's a huge coding academies in schools. Coursera, in fact, which you use here at the University of Houston, is actually creating on a mission to help refugees get free access to education. In Germany, there's a university there called Kiran University, which is getting refugees access to education from MIT, Harvard, and other places, because for 1 year they can't take college classes in Germany or other countries in Europe till they're assimilated into the country. So this is one way to ramp people up quickly. My friend Michael Mayrath, who used to be a UT Austin professor, has started a new company called KNOD, whether you pronounce it Node or Nod. They're trying to work with people in Africa and other developing parts of the world to get people skills that they need for the workplace and have people do projects with employers, real-world projects, to get them the experiences that they need. Okay, so my question for you now is, have you read any books, given this age of Education 3.0? Who reads books? Who's read a book lately? Even a digital book, right? I hope you've read some books, okay? Angela Duckworth's book called Grit is one I read recently. I highly recommend it to understand your students and those that persist and those that don't, and finding ways to help motivate your students in the classroom. This is a new psychological construct or area of investigation in psychology, positive psychology and grit. Another book that I recommend is this book, How Most Likely to Succeed by Tony Wagner and Ted Dintersmith, which gets at getting kids ready for this digital age. And he has another book called, I think it's The Innovators, looking at young people who started innovative companies and what were their family backgrounds was like, what their educational backgrounds was like. This book, Creative Living Without Fear, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote the book Eat, Pray, and Love. You might recognize the movie with Julia Roberts, is a book I couldn't put down, read 4 times, and sent it to a dozen of my friends last year at Christmas. And she talks really more than just creative writing, but how to be creative in life. This book by Sir Ken Robinson I just finished last week in my car, talking about how schools kill creativity. This is his newest book of many along this theme, The Element, Finding Your Element in Others. And then this book by the person who wrote the Steve Jobs bio and the Ben Franklin bio and so forth, Walter Isaacson. He wrote the Einstein bio as well. This is his best book of the bunch. And it really gives you a sense of the history of technology and innovation. And it starts with the 1800s, and the first computers, Charles Babbage and Ava Lovelace, were programming. She was the first programmer. A woman was the first programmer. In the 1940s, the first programmers were women until men figured out that it was an important job, and then they took it over. And finally, Machines of Loving Grace, another one I recently finished, looking for the quest for common ground between humans and robots. Now, the reason I point out these particular books is if you want to get a sense of Education 3.0 or Education 2020, you have to start searching and finding what your climate might be like, what you would like to create in your classrooms, and so forth. So this last book gets us thinking more about technology and the impact of technology. And there's 2 debates running right now, whether we should use technology to augment what we learn or to replace teachers. Should we augment the learning process or replace things within the learning process? So if you've read these books, you shall pass. Okay. So John McCarthy from the Stanford lab was one who believed in AI replacing people. Okay, so that was one strand, one theme for a long time. He actually coined the word artificial intelligence back in the 1950s. We had other people out there that were looking more at augmentation. Some people looked at whether we could talk to computers, and here's a little video.
John, we're going to show you a man actually talking to a computer.
Sounds funny today, does it? Okay, so here's a man actually talking to a computer at South by Southwest this past year. For the sake of time, I'll move on. But again, we're getting to the point where we'll be talking to not only computers, we'll be talking to walls and getting answers, and we're already talking to our phones and getting answers, right? Well, it all cycles back to this first demonstration that was called the mother of all demonstrations by Douglas Engelbart back in 1968. In this demonstration, he showed word processing, database analysis or searching. He showed video conferencing or web conferencing, collaboration, and all sorts of things in one demonstration, 1968.
The research program that I'm going to describe to you is quickly characterizable by saying, if in your office you as an intellectual worker were supplied with a computer display backed up by a computer that was alive for you all day and was instantly responsive, to every action you had, how much value could you derive from that? Other features of the mouse are that it stays put. I can lift it and replace it without having a spot change, so I can adjust where I want it for my comfort. Now, computer, do the automatic switching that'll bring in the camera picture from the camera mounted on his console, such as the camera mounted on mine is. Hi, Bill. That's great. Now we're connected audio. You can see my work. You can point at it. And I can see your face. And we can talk. So let's do some collaborating.
So that's 1968. And that's where Steve Jobs went to find out. You know, he went to the Xerox Palo Alto Research Lab to get ideas for the mouse and GUI interfaces and so forth. Now we're in the age of augmented reality, right? This is a new age of learning.
New ways to collaborate and explore the places we've never been.
Look at this formation. Let's take a closer look.
change the way you see the world, you can change the world you see.
Now these displays cost $3,000 to $5,000 today. They're going to come down in price. They'll be common when I come back here 10 years ago for the next big conference, right? Do you see this holding up an iPhone over a package? There's a company in South Korea that enables you to get product ratings from other people, advice from other people before you buy that product. You also have doctors wearing augmented reality lenses to look at patients or looking at anatomy. You also have artwork maybe being displayed this way with augmentation. And driving. The Mini Cooper enables you to get information about passengers that might be coming from your left and right, or maybe behind when you back up. You get additional information with this lens wear. We also have virtual reality, in addition to augmented reality, where medical students can find out what it's like to be a patient who's in their 70s or 80s or 90s and experience that. The NFL is actually experimenting with some tools to address racism, where you take the perspective of a homeless person on a train or on a subway, or an African-American woman being approached by a white male, and so forth. So this is actually coming out of Stanford University, virtual reality diversity demonstrations. Knowledge Navigator is a vision from John Scully, who was in charge of Apple after they fired Steve Jobs, and he needed a vision. So he paid $60,000 to create the Knowledge Navigator that's still up in YouTube today, and predicted the Siri. It predicted the iPhone. It predicted tablet computing and many things back in 1987. Okay, let me show you just a little clip of that.
You got 3 messages. Your graduate research team in Guatemala just checking in. Robert Jordan, a second semester junior, requesting a second extension on his term paper. Friend Jill Gilbert has published an article about deforestation in the Amazon and its effects on rainfall in the sub-Sahara. It also covers drought's effect on food production in Africa and increasing imports of food.
Contact Jill.
I'm sorry, she's not available right now. I left a message that you had called.
Copy the last 30 years at this location at 1-month intervals.
Excuse me, Jill Gilbert is calling back.
Great, put her through.
Hi Mike, what's up?
Jill, thanks for getting back to me.
So the Knowledge Navigator, alive and well today. We have now the Siri that we can talk to, right?
Hey Siri, what time is it?
The time is 2:15 p.m.
Hey Siri, how is the stock market doing?
Important.
Here's how the markets are doing.
And we've got Jeannie, or Cortana.
Hi, I'm Cortana.
Apparently Microsoft got interested in this and recently acquired it. Personal digital assistants, what's called PDAs, will enable us today to talk to not our Pringles potato chip can, but our devices, maybe a Pringles potato chip can, but you know, you have somebody, remember Tom Hanks in the Castaway movie? He talked to the volleyball and you know, he gave it a name, Wilson, remember that? We'll probably be naming these devices something so we have someone to interact with, right? We'll be talking to our Siri to get our fitness training information, talk to them about our workouts, our photos, our cabs we need, and so forth. This is already happening today. It's a revolution in education, and I talk about that in my World is Open book. I go through 10 trends that have changed the world that actually spell We All Learn, if you're interested in that. But remember, the gentleman earlier, what did he say? He said,
The world is really open to learning.
the world is really open to learning, and that is true today. There are many ways that we can now open up education for our students and for ourselves, and market our classes to people around the world to attract them to come in. Invite them in. To have them casually look at your class from China or wherever. This gentleman here became the world's junior golf champion at age 10 by watching Tiger Woods' videos and practicing in the sugarcane fields of his father. That's all he did. He said, watching YouTube videos changed his life. This gentleman here took 250 MOOCs from Africa and passed them all and got certificates from Nigeria without, you want to see the access he had?
This is where I live, in Nigeria, sub-Saharan Africa. power at the public power supply was too high a voltage?
So the power blew on him. You can read the article in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Amazing guy. And there are some amazing people out there. We're changing people's lives. We might hear about retention rates and so forth, but lives are being changed. The problem is there's a lack of understanding and awareness of what's possible. So my talk here today is to try and raise some of the understanding and awareness of what is possible. Open textbooks, I'll talk about next hour, and self-publishing of books, and Creative Commons, and how to make your content available for others to use. There's an awareness problem of these open educational possibilities. We are now moving into what I'm calling the fourth phase of e-learning. Some of you have just maybe heard about e-learning. First phase, 1994, April 4th, Netscape went public. April 4th, 1994, we had portals, we had stuff on the web, we had pages of stuff that went dead links, right? 7 years exactly later, April 4th, 2001, MIT, so let's make all our content free to the world. They now have over 2,200 classes free online. So we've been studying some of that. Then we fast forward 7 years later. What happened 7 years later? The first MOOC was offered by George Siemens and Stephen Downes in Canada. 7 years later, MIT said, let's make all our content, let's make our content personalized, more personalized learning paths. We're in this age now, or starting to, in the age of personalization of learning. 15 years ago, we had open the door to learning. In fact, I sent my resume to MIT and applied for the job of director the next day after they announced it, April 5th, 2001. They didn't reply. I don't know why, but they did sponsor some of my research. Dr. Lee and I have done some research on open education at MIT, and we have something published if you're interested on how people are using it. At the same time, we were looking at Wikipedia. 15 years ago, Wikipedia person dropped out of Indiana University and he created Wikipedia, okay? He was a doctoral student in our business school, Jimmy Wales. 15 years ago, OpenCourseWare started at MIT. A lot has happened in 15 years. 25 years ago, an important date, August 6th is an important date. August 6th, 1991 was the date the first web pages went up from Tim Berners-Lee. And so actually I got the inventor of the web to join us here today. It'll say 1989, but that's when it was first discussed. It was actually went on in 91.
This is a revolution in communications.
An electronic connection puts music into home computers all over the world. And emerging technology may turn us into a nation of stay-at-home, shop-at-home, couch potatoes, but don't expect the information superhighway to be finished until the turn of the century.
Email, 35 years old. Raymond Tomlinson passed away in the past year. He didn't really like email, but he invented email. He created hell for all of us. Okay, it was kind of he was just experimenting with it 25 years ago. And of course, we got Abraham Lincoln who experimented with T-mail, telegraph mail. He got the generals to move about and win the battles of the Civil War. Although I'm here in Texas, so I probably shouldn't repeat that. I better move on. So there's technology been impacting us for hundreds of years. Today, since I've been here the first time 10 years ago, a lot has happened. Learning's become more informal, video-based, ubiquitous, collaborative, self-directed, global, mobile, open, and massive, and much, much, much more. Okay, I'm going to talk about these trends from the standpoint of three specific megatrends that are happening for people in China, in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Indonesia. The first trend is about access. See, in America, we're concerned a lot about the quality of online education and blended learning and massive open online, but you go to China, the first issue is access first. Then we have to address engagement and quality issues and personalization. So they're over here in pervasive access. In fact, they renamed a building in Beijing that I visited last year, the MOOCs Times building. They've equated the word e-learning with massive open education there, because they need to get education out to masses of people. So I'll talk first about engagement. How do we engage? I'm not going to start with access. I'm going to start with engagement through games, through video, through immersive environments, through mobile technologies. Now, some of you might say that we can't afford. Some people people in India and Africa and China can't afford some of these technologies. Well, many of the collaborative technologies out there today are free. I've been exploring collaboration since 1991 and did a national survey, and we looked at Indiana University when I arrived in 1992. We looked at forms of collaboration online. A tool called Aspects back in 1990 and 91 would let you work all around the world on the same document as long as you weren't editing the same line of text. In India, they've developed a smartphone for under $4. People are working at Arizona State on a flash memory stick that will have a terabyte of data for $1. Already in India, they're trying to create the $10 laptop computer, so price is becoming less of an issue, especially with things being free and open. And now people are experimenting with just-in-time support on your mobile devices, so you'll be learning wherever you happen to be with your mobile devices. And we'll have bendable text where we can expand the screen size at some point. People at LG and Samsung and Sony are working on bendable text, full-length kind of, or bigger screens. We're also going to smaller screens with wristwatches and other things for accessing our learning. For now, these smart watches are really used for just planning your day and finding out information for the restaurant and things like that. They're not productivity tools. They're just information search and organization kind of tools. Also for engaging learners, as I mentioned earlier, expanding your classroom to let kids work with others all around the world. Let your students work with others around the world, or get experts to come into your classroom around the world, whether you bring them to the Great Barrier Reef, or the Louvre, or the Golden Gate Bridge, or the Arctic North, or wherever it happens to be. Video conferencing today enables you to get students excited about what's happening on a ship somewhere in the world where they're making a new discovery, or the Amazon rainforest, or whatever your topics might happen to be. And the tools for doing this are getting more sophisticated. This tool I was a guest speaker in called Shindig. I was a guest a couple of months ago. My Chief Information Officer, or Vice President of Information Technology, was a guest for this guy. His name is Brian. And Brian has a weekly show that he does. And I'm blanking on Brian's last name for a second, Brian Alexander. And you can see down below here, people come and come to the session, and you can connect your image with someone else and have a private discussion during a main event. You can have multiple chat discussions and video discussions during a main event. It's called Shindig. It's kind of a cool little tool. Some people are using Pokemon games. Any Pokemon people in the room here? Okay, to engage the learner in augmented kinds of experience, augmented reality kinds of experiences. My friend Aaron Daring, who was with me in Korea last month, or a month and a half ago, he does the Polar Husky Project, where students around the world follow his expeditions to the Arctic North. He has Earth Education, where he looks at climate change around the world, in Africa and Australia and the US, all over the world. He has a project called Geoauthentic Learning, where they look at points of interest, geographic points of interest, and get kids excited about geography. But he has a website called Chasing Seals, where he has all those different projects explained and discussed. One project is called North of 60, where he looks at what's happening at north of 60 degrees latitude. He looks at cultures of the world, in northern parts of Alaska and Manitoba and Winnipeg and so forth. So he's an interesting guy. He's from Minnesota, you betcha. But it's a fun person anyhow. Engaging the learners in real-world discoveries, getting them excited about real-world science, if you will. And there's a couple pictures. There's him on a snow sled or a ski team. I was not the one going on a snow sled or a ski team. And at the same time, his class is having their final projects in Minnesota, in St. Paul, Minnesota, their lab. And he was able to correspond with them at 30 below Fahrenheit at night from his tent. Engaging students through maps. When I went to New Zealand, I wanted to look at what languages people were speaking in New Zealand. Of course, it's English and Maori. And so there's a website out of Maryland that's a language learning map. So you can find out, you can click on any country and find out what languages are taught there. I clicked on Turkey to find out what's there. You could click on China. You can click on US. Also, you can engage people with simulations and animations. There's a new museum from the Smithsonian, an African-American museum, that has a lot of animations and virtual reality exhibits that you can engage with today. You can't get into that museum because everyone's trying to get in, but at least you can interact virtually with some of the exhibits. And when you get there, you can put on some virtual reality 3D lenswear. Learning's become more immersive, whether it's going to an NBA game with virtual reality headsets on, you're sitting in the back row and having the experience of being in the front row. That's what they're working on. That's what the NBA is working on. So if you have really bad seats for a football game or basketball game or whatever, you can have these headsets to make it look like you're close and comfortable. And doctors are using some of these 3D virtual reality, as I mentioned earlier, to look at patient information. In this little example here, someone used Google Cardboard to save a baby's life earlier this year. Engagement, again, can happen through maps, whether it's weather maps or something else. Just visual displays of information are more prominent today than they were 10 years ago when I was here. So showing climate change, showing maps of the U.S. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has maps that show, in effect, global warming over time. They show the different roses that you can grow in Indiana, and the seasons of the year that you can grow them has changed since 10 years ago. We have a longer growing season than we had before. In fact, I was telling Tom, I think earlier this week, that Indiana is a wonderful place to go to school if anyone wants to go to school, because our climate's so wonderful right now. I mean, it's so warm and it never gets cold, never snows. Engagement, I know it doesn't snow here, but I was here once in December when it snowed. So engagement can also happen through scientific discoveries. A gigantic whale was found in Alaska a couple of months ago that no one even knew existed, okay? There are new species of whales out there that we don't even know about. Get kids excited about paleontology, showing them new dinosaur discoveries that happen pretty much every week. So if you want to learn more about engagement, actually my book has an entire chapter on engagement you can download right now and read, with 10 ways to engage students in the learning process. I have chapters on curiosity and interactivity and climate and so forth. The second section gets at pervasive access. Pervasive access to information, whether that access is coming through streaming of information, through video, through access of experts out there. Access is important, as I said, in developing parts of the world. You have the South by Southwest conference, South by Southwest EDU in Austin every year. And this year I couldn't go. I've been twice, but I watched it from my home. I could access it through video streaming. They have live events every day. And that's true of many conferences today, that if you can't afford to go, often they're streamed and they're recorded. This is being recorded today. And so those of you who are watching this later, my email will be at the end, but send me an email. I'm happy to chat. We're moving from a world of Wikipedia to Videopedia. The video is alive and well for all our lives today, right? And because bandwidth has gone up, the amount of storage has gone up, the costs have come down. So we're able to store more things. In 1995, when I wanted to do video conferencing and combine 2 video conferencing systems together, my president thought I'd take down the internet. He was worried about that. And today I can record a 5-hour video conference and no one blinks an eye. We just put it on our server at IU, and I teach a 5-hour class on Saturdays. We record everything and make it available. Times have changed. Times have changed dramatically since I was here last 10 years ago. Video is pervasive. In fact, when you go to a conference now, as I said, they're recorded. This gentleman here, Casey Green, went to an important conference at Arizona State, interviewed all the keynotes, interviewed all the invited people, interviewed anyone in the audience who's known, and he put up his own channel on YouTube. So if you couldn't go, you could learn from these experts all around the world. This is what's happening today. And so much video access is happening. A new company has been created called Degreed. This gentleman would like you to get degrees, get you some credentials for the videos you watch. Okay? This is coming. Have to create some kind of accreditation process for this Tom Rees will probably talk about this more later on, but wouldn't you like to get credit for the TED Talks you watch? Learning is also more immediate. Learning is more immediate. Immediate science is what I call it. And so when a new discovery happens and a scientist, writes up a journal article the same day that their journal article comes out in Science or in Nature or wherever, the same day they might have a video clip explaining what they're doing. The same day CNN might interview them. The same day their book might come out. And this has happened several times in the past couple of years. A missing link was found a few years ago in the human evolutionary chain, and the same day the book came out, the website went live, the interviews went out from Sir David Attenborough. In this case, Florida State professors found new bones of mastodons being hunted by human beings thousands of years before they thought humans were in North America. It disproves the Clovis theory that the first humans were in Clovis, New Mexico, where my daughter now lives. It disproves that the notion that they came over on the ice bridge, because the ice bridge wasn't even available at the time in which these bones were found. So how did these people get to Florida, of all places, if they couldn't go across the fictional ice bridge, well, the real ice bridge? Experts can come into your class at any time today. You can bring in someone at the Expert Cafe, and I'm bringing in experts every week to excite my students in an optional synchronous meeting. They don't have to come. But if they come to 4 or more, they can write a reflection on it and replace one of their midterms. If they come to 8 or more, they can replace one of their finals. It's an option. It's an option to get them excited about learning and excited about new things. But I don't require it. I'm trying to get them to see that there are multiple paths and ways to learn today. This young girl, 9 years old, is the youngest developer for Apple. And she's learned through online conferences, online education, and other kinds of things. And she was at the Apple Web Developers Conference a couple of months ago. This young gentleman here was 13 years old, I believe, when he took an MIT course in circuits and electronics. 300 people in a class of 140,000 people got a perfect score. He got a perfect score as a teenager in Mongolia. Then he went to a summer entrepreneurship camp at Boston at MIT, and then got admitted as a student, as a teenager. Some of these people learning through open access are then scoring so well they get admitted into the university. Very interesting things are happening. This woman too, I think coming from Taiwan, both of them did that. They learned online free, then went to a summer entrepreneurship camp, and then got admitted into the university. The third section, or megatrend, is customization of learning. And I see I have about 11 minutes on my watch left. Customization of learning. So how are we going to make learning more personalized for our students? So among the ways is to blend or create hybrid. How many of you like hybrid learning? Hybrid, right? Hybrid's the interbreeding of 2 or more species of animals to create a mongrel. I'll call it blended learning. So blended learning, hybrid learning, self-directed open learning. My current research team is called the Self-Directed Online Learning Environments Team, SOUL team. And we're looking at how people are utilizing this free and open access to contents and information. On-demand learning, just-in-time learning. But also it's about learning environments that we're seated in, the places that we go. And today schools are now building more neighborhood-like structures. You might see your kids' schools, or any new schools going up, they're trying to build ways to collaborate and interact. And any new buildings in university settings, they're really thinking through how to design, what it's going to look like. And I think, in part, online learning has forced us to rethink face-to-face learning. At Indiana University, we've got a brand new media school that combines our telecom and journalism department. And this is the inside look, and they have these gigantic video screens throughout the building and production studios. But we have something called an IQ wall, the gigantic IQ wall, the largest multi-tiled wall in the world with a single projector. And we can bring in this IQ wall. Think of all those as images I could bring in, video I could bring in of people around the world. So one year I brought in people in my final week of the class. I brought in people from around the world to talk to my students who we read their articles during the semester as a final capstone event. Very cool event. But we have those gigantic video displays. We have modular chairs. We have marker boards throughout our classrooms. All walls are marker walls. So trying to find ways to get students to interact with ideas and put ideas on display and so forth, with video conferencing to our other Indiana sites. And here in Korea, where I was a month and a half ago, I went and visited different cafes, and you can see they have one place that has a study cafe, an idea space cafe, a meeting space, idea groups. They have different rooms for different kinds of discussion, and interaction, and collaboration. And so we see that also in libraries today. Sometimes a library is being built. The first floor might be social, the second floor might be collaborative, third floor might be individual learning. In Scotland, at Glasgow Caledonian, they have a 4-level building. Every level is a different kind of learning. At Yonsei University in Korea, every level of the library is a different kind of learning. People are thinking about the learning processes today so people can get access to the information that they need. In terms of access to information, this is a site that just went up or just was announced even though it already has a lot of books. This is called Bookshare, a place for helping people with disabilities access books by making them speak the book, talk the book out. Okay? It's a free site for North America. Anyone in North America can use this particular site called Bookshare. It's an accessible online library of 10 million books. Customization of learning also happens through blended learning. The #1 degree at Portland State University is in beer making. My son's living in Portland. He really actually doesn't drink much beer. He doesn't drink much actually at all. But he finds it fascinating that everywhere, every corner has a different brew pub. But the reason is that these people, the beer brewmasters, don't want to go to a regular classroom. Maybe weekends I can come to class, online during the week. So it's a hot growing degree area. So if the University of Houston wants to, you might think about creating a degree in beer making, a blended degree. In India, they got agriculture MOOCs to help farmers in rural parts of India get access to the information they need about growing plants and fertilization and all sorts of things on their mobile devices, mostly text, because they can't stream a lot of video, so it's mostly text-related information. And there's now something called GROCs, or group-related MOOCs, to get people involved in social change in a community, whether it's a pollution issue or environmental issue or some other kind of social and cultural issue, to get groups together to solve problems. It's an interesting idea. In fact, some of you may have heard that MOOCs are dying out. On this chart here, or this graph, you can see that MOOCs are not dying out. These massive open online courses where thousands of people take a class simultaneously for free. In fact, there's so many MOOCs being offered, we need a top 50 list. And the #1 MOOC being offered is a MOOC on happiness. Okay? Python programming is also in the top 10, but happiness. People want happiness, and they seek it out. And if you're interested, there's a website called Class Central that indexes all these gigantic classes. And you can take most of them for free. Not all of them are free, but the vast majority are. And get some certificates for them as well. And there's the guy who teaches from India on happiness, a life of happiness and fulfillment. His nickname is Dr. Happy Smarts. You can actually get micro-credentials or nano-degrees or certificates. I see I have 5 minutes left. I think Bernard's holding up a 5-minute sign somewhere behind me. I won't look that way. So nano-degrees, small bits. And this is an area that I think is going to be growing in the future. You can count on it 10 years from now. You'll see more certificates on college campuses, more small bits of learning. Students in my program take a 4-class minor or a certificate and then get interested in our masters. That's a way to dip them in, dip their toes in the water by taking the first 4 courses or 5 courses and then take more and then take our EDD and so forth. In fact, at Udacity, they're now guaranteeing in some of their tracks that you will get a job as a programmer if you take 4 or 5 of their courses, but you pay, in this case, you pay $700 for that $65,000 a year job as a programmer, and they'll give you your money back if you don't get one. Coursera now has specializations in many areas, and you're using Coursera here. They have specializations in 3D printing, machine learning, as you see up there, in survey analysis, marketing, programming, and so forth. Get cozy with a class. Udemy says get cozy with a class. When I was growing up, I didn't see any billboards saying get cozy with a class. It's just times have changed. We've got learning wrapped around us all the time now. MOOCs and open education around the world. And some of you at the end of today, can I say this? The first 100 people who signed up today are going to get our book. And we've signed it for you. And if you're on the wait list, hang around, because some people are not here who didn't show up. You might get one as well. So don't think you're not going to get one, but we have 100. If you don't stay to the end, you will not get one, even if you're signed up early. So a way to keep you in. So we did a book and a special issue on MOOCs and open education a year ago. And we'll talk more about that through the course of today. Dr. Mimi Lee, Tom Reeves, myself, and Tom Reynolds. In that book, we have Paul Kim talking about ecologies of learning and how students supported each other for the resources that the course didn't provide, that they provided each other, such as translating the videos to other languages, making things available for people who might need them in other parts of the world, making it easier to understand and forming discussion groups around the content to help others understand what's being said, what the key terms are about the course. He looked at the spontaneous mini ecosystem. Dr. Chuck Severance, who I gave the first commencement address for, taught a course for 40,000 people at the University of Michigan. And I was able, on the Michigan campus one day, and was able to give the commencement talk at the end of his semester. This is a couple of years ago. And he has a chapter where he goes through meeting students all over the world who have taken his class.
Hello and welcome to the graduation ceremony for my MOOC. I'm, of course, Dr. Charles Severance, and I'm your instructor, and I'll be awarding you your certificate when the time comes. I really appreciate the fact that you've stuck with the class long enough to get a certificate. But as is traditional with graduations, we have a graduation speaker. And he's my good friend and colleague, Kurt Bonk, from Indiana University. And so before we do the graduation ceremony, I would like to have our graduation speaker talk briefly.
Notice he said briefly. So he travels the world. He goes to Manila and he goes to Seoul, Korea, and he meets his students in cafes, in bookstores, and he has office hours. Of his 40,000 students around the world, he meets them and finds out what they're interested in. In Korea, they have something called K-MOOCs. They put content out in Korean, so they're not just having English-based MOOCs. And I had a chance to visit the center offering these courses in April and May, and they're expanding to over 100 MOOCs in Korea alone. So those are the three mega trends out there, and these are the 30 ways learning is changing. So we've got engagement issues, adventure, mobile, game-like, immersive. We've got access issues, making it free and open and immediate and ubiquitous. And we've got customization issues, modifiable, communal, massive, personal, and so forth. So what's next? Where are we going to find Education 3.0 here on this campus? Where are we going to find Education 2020? Well, I'll say listen to the rest of the speaker. Go to Stephen's talk later today. You'll be here for it. You'll hear from Dr. Reeves. You'll hear from some of us in the afternoon during breakout sessions. You'll hear from Richard Baranek at around 11 o'clock today talking about OpenStax. You'll hear from all of us and get a vision maybe by the end of the day about Education 3.0 or Education 2020. You can also read EDUCAUSE reports. Every year EDUCAUSE has an annual report called the Horizons Report that predicts what's coming next in the next year, the next 3 months. Just type in Horizon Report, EDUCAUSE. There's one for high school, there's one for college, there's one for community college. It's a fascinating web project. We might have teaching assistants that are robots in the future, as you see here. Watson, Jennifer Watson or Jill Watson here, instead of Watson you saw on Jeopardy, can be your assistant. Also, we might have robots come into our classroom that represent 6 students around the world. It might be ill, might be physically immobile or disabled. They can come in through a visual device, and you can actually see and talk to them through they're calling these robots. They're not really robots, telepresence kind of systems. We also are going to, in the future, have more humans in the loop in terms of these massive open online classes. Humans grading our papers, giving us feedback, and so forth. We're also going to have more communal activities, collaborative activities in the future. Also in the future, we're going to have self-driving cars, as we know. And there's going to be MOOCs to create. There's a MOOC coming out already to create engineers that are creating self-driving cars or self-flying vehicles or drones. And they're trying to create drones that will fly above us for 3 months that will enable, they'll hover above, that will enable internet to come to rural communities around the world. Or driverless trucks or whatever. There's a company called Flexport that's talking about that. So this talk, I discussed Education 2020, Education 3.0. It's basically the same thing. We're moving to an age of personalizing learning. We're moving to an age where the instructor role is changing. We're moving to an age where we have to think about ecologies of learning, the learning environments, if you will. And what are the principles of learning for these new learning environments? The principle of flexibility, the principle of convenience, the principle of meaningfulness, the principles of collaboration, options, all these important principles we need to ponder for our own classes today. And again, these 3 megatrends, engagement, access, and customization, encapsulate the 30 trends that are happening today. If just one thing happened, if just blended learning had happened, it'd be a revolution. If just open education had happened, it'd be a revolution. But we've got all these things happening simultaneously today. Things are heating up. Things are getting hot. Say it with me. So beautiful. Okay. Education is precious for all of us. I hope that you had a chance to get a vision of where we're going in this precious age that we're living. We're lucky to be alive today, to be honest. Education 3.0 is within reach. I can't do it alone. I need your help. Who's now interested in Education 3.0? Are you willing to help? Okay, on the count of 3, you're going to say, I cannot do this alone. 1, 2, 3. I cannot do this alone. I cannot do this alone. I cannot do this alone.
I cannot do this alone.
Okay. No. I can cut them off, too. So my notes are up at trainingshare.com. All my slides for the talks. I gave 2 talks yesterday on publishing and about research. They're up at trainingshare.com, archive talks. My original slides, you can have them and download them, use them and remix them. And my free book is up there too. Don't come to my session the next session. Go to the others. Just download it at techvariety.com. Now, I've noticed that a couple of you were laughing at my jokes in the room. This lady right here has been laughing at several of my jokes. And the gentleman right here has been laughing at. I have 2 more for the first 2 people that come up afterwards, and I'll give away. So thank you very much. Enjoy today.